Hello, Foxy listeners. I am really excited for this episode. Listen, if you are not the type of person who wants to catch it, cut it, freeze it, or ship it, you have to find somebody who's going to be willing to do that. And I have done that for you today. I am so excited to have my guest, Sena Wheeler, on the show, who is a fifth generation fishing family and the co-founder of Sena Sea, which brings wild Alaskan seafood directly to your door. Now, we're going to be talking about what it's like to work with your husband because her and her husband are really enjoying running this family business together. But we might dig in a little bit to what the other side of that is like. Sena, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here.
I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So you have so much of a background and knowledge, master's degree in nutrition and food science. So give those listeners who haven't deep dive and kind of stalked you like I have a little bit of background on you.
Okay, I'll try to be quick, but you might have to move me along.
That's okay.
So like you said, I grew up in a fishing family. My dad was a fisherman, and my grandpa and uncles and everybody before him in the Seattle area, fishing up in Alaska. And my mom ran a health food store. So we ate a lot of fish, and we ate pretty healthy. So when I went to college, I tried a few things and hit nutrition and was like, oh, yes, this is what I would just do on my own, just out of interest. So I was like, wow, you can make a major out of this. So I loved nutrition and food science because I'm more of the science side of things. I like when there's answers. And so, and then I went into, I got my master's degree in food science, and that's because I wanted to work like for a food company, R&D developing products, as opposed to nutrition where it might be in a more hospital setting.
Right.
So for me, that was an awesome choice. I loved it. When I went to Oregon State to get my master's, it's just one of those funny things where fish always comes, it's like full circle. It always keeps coming back. And like, I'm not seeking it. It's just always there. And so I was looking for an advisor to get into the program. And I saw there was an advisor for it was food science fisheries department. And I was like, oh, that sounds familiar. And the post said, needing somebody that could go out on the boat and be comfortable in that environment and testing fish and things. And so I wrote one email. Oh yeah, I worked on my dad's boat, in the summer times and go up to Alaska, and totally comfortable with that. And boom, he accepted me, and I got my full master's, full scholarship paid for my whole master's degree. And so it was awesome. I was like, oh, okay, I'll study fish, no problem.
Yeah, that came in handy.
It just felt like, oh, a fish thing landed on my lap. And then I went to work for corporate, like I had planned for R&D. So I actually took the kind of the right turn and went into food, and I worked for a national food company. So I worked in the R&D where we're doing, very standard cakes, pancakes, brownies in a box kind of a thing. And I loved it. That was very, what I would consider kind of very pure food science. It was like, how does this affect this? And, measuring the height of brownies, and it was really great. And then we had 2 kids. and we were in the city, and we decided to move way out rural. So, and have our third out there. So then I stayed home. And so I was home for about 4 years. Well, okay, I'm still home. I'm home right now. But when our third was about 3, it was like, oh, Rich and I, we were going on a drive. Rich is fishing all this time. He's a commercial fisherman. And so he's gone, I would say half, he's in and out, 5 weeks out, a couple weeks home kind of a thing when he was longlining. We were driving to Thanksgiving, and he was catching Copper River salmon, and he was on the marketing board. There's a marketing association for how to market Copper River salmon. And I'm chirping in his ear and going, oh, well, they should do this and they should do that. They should market it like grass-fed beef. They should market it like this. They should do that. And finally, he just looks at me and goes, yeah, you should. And I said, yeah, you should. And he says, no, you should. You should sell my fish. And I was like, huh. And it was an 8-hour drive to Thanksgiving. And by the time we arrived to Thanksgiving, we told our family, we're going to start a business. It's going to be called Sena Sea, and we're selling Rich's fish.
Which is the best way. Like, I mean, I've had many of those sort of moments or epiphanies where it just all of a sudden everything just clicks, right?
Right.
And you're just like, hey, I guess we're doing this now. Like,
Right.
buckle
And
up.
then the wild part is then we did it.
Yeah, right. And followed
Yeah.
through on that. Because,
Yeah.
and some people out there, like I said, I've deep dived and I've always found that interesting. I've always watched shows on that, because I'm like, gosh, that's like such a life. Now, my parents lived on a boat for years. They kind of retired early and then they sailed. So I was used to hearing like all of the stories. And my dad used to always, like, I would be like, that's crazy. Like he would talk about a tropical storm or whatever. And he'd be like, that's nothing. Like you should see the Alaskan fishermen. And so like I was kind of always in that. But this isn't a small thing. It's not like you're going out in like a little fishing boat and catching fish. This was a big business to kind of go into.
Well, and I'll kind of differentiate because depending on the fish, like the boat size and that kind of a thing is different. So our family history is long lining. That's like long lining for halibut and black cod. And that is a boat that is maybe like our family boat was 72 feet and it would be a crew of 5. And so it would be, a lot of people want to compare to Deadliest Catch, which makes sense. A lot of people have seen the show. And that is similar. The boats are a little smaller than that. And the main difference with Deadliest Catch is they are crabbing in the winter. And the winter just brings its own set of conditions and everything's icing up and things like that, and the heavy crab pots. So a long lining is like that because the crew size is similar. The boat's a little bit smaller, but they're not dealing with the heavy crab pots and the winter conditions. It's in the summer. And if they are on a quota system. If it's blowing a gale, they can stay in and just go later. They don't have to go at that opening. So that makes a really big difference. So Rich had done long line. He'd been a long liner for 20 years. And then we bought into salmon. And so we do the Copper River salmon also. And the Copper River salmon is a small boat. They have a boat size limit. I think it's about 32 feet. Depending on the area, and it's all salmon is caught at the mouth of a river. So it's Copper River salmon. That's the river. If you're doing Bristol Bay, that's where you're catching it. So it's location specific, and they have really specific regulations. And then you are in a pretty small boat. Like Copper River is 28 or 32 foot size limit. And usually it's caught with 1 or 2 guys on the boat. We fit our family of 5 on the boat, and we take the whole family out, which is really fun and really tight. It's like the living space is like a very small RV. It's like a camper.
Yeah, my mom's boat was a 35 foot, so I can like sailboat, but it was like either you sit there or up. There's no in between. Like it.
And we have the deck, so you're either in this small area or you're out on deck. And so, but it's always it's one of those things, having a family on the fishing boat where it's like in the moment, you're kind of like, it is a little bit loud. It's a little bit crazy. I have some old videos from when they were little, and it just makes you laugh. But later, when you think back on those moments, they kind of get a rosier tint, and the kids have all these stories about it. And oh, remember that time? And it's like, oh, that was really cool, wasn't it?
Hindsight always makes those moments like a little bit sweeter. I remember visiting my mom once when they were in Puerto Rico, and I was like, in the moment, I was like, I can't believe I'm bathing my kid in a freaking 5 gallon bucket. Like, this is ridiculous. But now it's like one of my favorite memories is like seeing the photos and going, gosh, do you remember that? Like, do you remember waking up and like catching the rain and because we needed water and like all those kind of, fun things. So when you guys were out, like how long would you go out for with the whole family?
So it just depended, and we would go up, and Rich would fish this summer, and I would bring the kids up when I can for as long as I could. So we would go like a 2 to 6 or 8 weeks. And then the time out was really whatever we wanted,
Right.
which sounds, the fishing is usually it's 4 to 6 hours on the boat, a boat run. And so you go out and then you fish and then you kind of link together openings and go, oh, there's an opening, or this opening is longer, or it looks like it's going to be closed for a bit. Let's go back. And so it's very fluid. So, and it's this tiny little fridge, like a little, probably an RV fridge. So I'd pack some vegetables, rice, some staples, and then it was like, let's just see how long the food lasts. And we're going to be catching fish, obviously, and eating fish. And so we're just kind of stretching and going, well, yeah, we could stretch it one more. What do you think, kids? And between an opener, you go, drop the hook would be putting the anchor down in a safe little harbor and spending the night. And so if we had a day between, it would, oh, let's kayak to the beach and check out some trails or something like that. So it became kind of a little adventure, like, oh, let's link together another couple days. Yeah, let's do this. Or, oh, nope, time to go in.
And so let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges because like you said, you guys decided to move quite rural, and then starting a business with that is, has its own set of, problems, especially it being an online business. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of that?
Yeah, it was a really interesting choice to do an online business. Partly because I like to talk to people that I know, but just the idea, like, okay, I just want the orders to kind of come in, while I'm sleeping, that kind of
Yeah.
a theory,
I don't
right?
want to have to like, sell the
Yeah,
like, do you want some fish?
I
You
don't want to
know?
like knock on people's doors and so, but it was an interesting choice because we had rural internet, and this was 8 years ago, and pre-Starlink. um, and we had it people don't even understand what it's like, but you have the bandwidth and like a certain amount of bandwidth because it was on satellite. And so we have more internet capabilities at night. So about 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. is it's like everybody's sleeping and there's more bandwidth. I don't really, I think. And so in the day you could check your email, but you can't like download anything. So one of the first things we did when we decided to start this business, I had a degree in food science but not much business, so I took a online business marketing class, which was online, and it was done by video. And with our internet, I just basically had to commit to waking up at 6 in the morning to watch the videos and do the homework before the 8 a.m. cutoff. And
Right.
so it was really, and then, I have 3 young kids at home and Rich is off fishing. And so it actually, sometimes I think that structure helped me do it, because it was like, well, this is it. This is the only way it's going to work, because I'm not a late night person. The only way for me is to get up and do this and get it done. And like, when you want to hit snooze and go, never mind, I go, well, how am I going to make it up? I can't do it later, so I have to do it now. So that structure, I feel like, kind of pushed me through to kind of get that course done. And it was an excellent course, and it followed all the way through, like, build the website and start an email list, which I had never heard of because I lived rural and was not on anybody's email list. I didn't
Right.
When I remember listening and going, email list, like, I don't even really know what they're talking about. But I did it and set it up. And then I started emailing my, my people because it said to do it. And I'm emailing the people on my list were like my parents and a couple family friends. And I was like, do, 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 do. It
Join
was
my list.
yeah, it was a perfect way to start because I was like, well, Rich is coming home and he's bringing this fish. Like, it just was a really nice way to start communicating in a comfortable way because I knew everybody on the list anyways. And so it really helped me just kind of start and then just do it because I feel like if I'd waited till I felt ready or, I had something really important to say, then it would have been hard to get started on that.
Yeah. And so how has it been? Like, I have run businesses and still do with my husband, but there is those, niceties, and then there's also those struggles because it's hard to like you hear people all the time say, well, you know, when you're working, you're working, when you're home, and you divide those two. And I'm like, who the hell ever actually has done that?
Yeah,
So,
I don't
like,
know.
it's a single person saying that. It has to be.
Oh, we have never had much divide and but that's the thing. Sena Sea is a really personal brand, and I mean it has my name. My middle initial is the letter C, and that's where it comes from. We just changed the letter C to SEA, so it's Sena Sea. It's like it really is my name, so that it's very personal, and then it's about our lifestyle, which there's very little separation, and we're kind of all in people. So our kids are involved. They know all about it. They go to the farmer's market and sell. They'd be on the boat and catching the fish. And then they go to the farmer's market when we come home with me. And I remember once my son was about, I don't know, 10 or 11, and I had to use the restroom and leave him at the booth. I took the money and just said, talk to people. And I come back and this guy is at the booth and he's going, is this kid serious? Did this kid catch this fish and do all these things? And he told me these stories. Is this for real? And I said, oh yeah, we just got back from Alaska. And he said, here's my wallet, take my money. I mean, this is incredible. I'll take whatever you have.
Which is good because it's a great, I think my son was also raised, we were entrepreneurs when he was first born. He doesn't know any different. So for him, like, he took his first steps in an office because that was just kind of where we were. And I remember thinking, like, either he's going to grow up with this amazing work ethic, or he's never going to want to work because he's like, I've been working since I was like, before I could walk, I've had to go to work. Right now,
Right.
luckily he's 16 now, and it is the latter. He has an amazing work ethic. Like, he treats his job like it's, his own business and stuff like that. But I do think that kids who are sort of raised in that atmosphere get a lot more skills that others would never be exposed to.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, especially with Rich and I both. So we're kind of all in, and Rich is fishing, I'm selling fish, like this very family business, and they see us both kind of working all the time, but yet able to do all of their activities and things like that too. So like way back when we were living way rural, where we lived in a place where we were the only people that lived year round, but people would come up and camp. They had a property and they'd come with their RVs or whatever. So there'd be these big weekends, Memorial Weekend, Labor Day weekend, all the neighbors would show up, and here come my kids and they have either painted on rocks or folded origami. They've got something, right, that they're going to sell, because here come the customers and they would load up their little wagon and they go around and sell rocks or something. And it was just like that for them. It was like, oh, awesome, here we go. And they go make some money. And they learned real quick, like, okay, Sunday morning is not a good time for sales. Saturday evening, really good time for sales. So,
Because everybody's enjoying themselves.
yeah, they dialed that in really quick. And they'd be out there, they'd have a good day. They'd be out there painting some rocks real quick. And I'm just like,
I mean, it's better than being inside stuck at, like, video games and stuff like that. But it's all those, like you said, it's those memories now that just carries them on. Like every time my son sees like a step stool and stuff, he's like, remember we used to always have one in the store? Because he would help me, same thing. Like, oh, I had a retail store and it was like, I would be like, okay, I just have to go to the bathroom like really quick. But he couldn't see over the counter. And like to other people who were not entrepreneurs, they would be like, that's really irresponsible of you. Like something could have happened. And I was like, didn't even dawn on me. Like I was just like, dude, just watch the store.
Just be right there.
It
Well,
just,
when you say that, it makes me remember, I mean, my mom had a health food store and we worked at the health food store, and
yep.
we would just come to work with her. And I mean, it was like babysitting slash work. She had a little storeroom like in the back, and she'd give us a price gun and we'd price sodas, or it was healthy sodas.
Yeah.
But it was like half hanging out and half kind of pricing. And I think that she really was like, hey, if pricing happens, I'm happy. But if nothing gets broke, I'm happy.
Yeah. If the quiet happens, that'll be okay. Well, and I think like, there was so many benefits even for me to be like, hey, I want to order this new thing. I'd get samples in and I'd just see what he would play with and stuff like it was great. Like it worked really, really well. But I think, there was so much that he got out of those experiences that weren't intentional from me as a parent. It was just, this is just the way it needs to be. And I want him with me as opposed to just throwing him in like a daycare or something all day. I might as well just have him here because it was cheap.
Yeah, and you have memories from those times. It's like all the kids at the farmers market. Um, I would bring all the market stuff, and then three kids, and sometimes the kids would have like they'd be like squished in the car. There's not much room, but and they had these little tiny. We have an older son and then two girls, and they'd have their little like tiny little camping chairs. They're like their princess chairs and their blankie,
Yeah.
because it started real early. So we'd set up and they'd set up their little camp chairs, get their little blanket, and just have their little coloring time or whatever. But yeah, I agree. You don't know what little things are going in, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's that, that incorporation of the kids into the business. I think anybody who has a family business, especially like yourself, there is kind of that hope that, okay, this is now that we're at 5 generations, we would like it to be 6. And that exposure, I think, helps.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see kind of what they do with it, or what they migrate toward as they grow older, and kind of what they choose, because we've been like, you know, it's totally their choice, and we'll see what they do with it all. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure.
So when you guys first started the business, you were talking about how he was like, okay, I'm going to fish, you're going to sell my fish, but it's grown since then. Can you talk to us about like that growth? When did you decide, hey, let's add some more things, and then talk to us about what those things are that you added in?
I think that growth for us, Rich and I are like, in a lot of ways, we're sort of opposites. Opposites attract, and it makes it really great for business and challenging for business. But one thing we have in similar, like we're both strivers. We're both always going to be growing and doing more. Like we're just kind of always moving forward. And so we started, yes, like I said, we just like took some of his fish and we were selling that, and we're kind of growing that, and using the farmers market. And I really had this online idea, but luckily we had the farmers market, because online is really slow to grow. And so the farmers market took the pressure off, so I could do everything right online, but just let it grow at its own pace. And then
Because I imagine that would be slow. Like I'm thinking like, even if you go back then, that wasn't a common thing to be like, I'm going to just search, like, oh, I need something, let me search online. Like this
right,
isn't that
right.
long ago that people were like, oh, I want some wild fish, I'll just order it online. Like
Yeah,
that
this
wasn't
is
a normal thing.
2014, and people are like, fish in the mail.
I'm not too sure about that. Yeah.
We always joke about the date. We built the website or had it built. It was a big deal. We got out the champagne, like it's launching tonight, ching, and we're like, and it's crickets. I
Yeah.
mean, we're expecting what? Like people like would be lined up at your website. Nobody knows it's there. It's just in people, it's just in the world, it's out in the ether. Like nobody knows. It takes a long time to build an online sort of presence and SEO and following, well, we had no idea about that. But the farmers market is what kept us kind of moving forward, and where we gained all of our knowledge, everything about what our customers want, what they're looking for, their number one question, it all came from the farmers market. Our top, we had clients, and all of our biggest kind of jumps forward, like contacts, came from the farmers market because we were selling in person. So we wouldn't change it for a minute, but that time did allow like the website to catch up, and it is easier to scale on the website. So it worked out really, really well. But about 4 years in, we had been getting our fish cut. So Cordova is a small town, and Rich is fishing, and we're going up and going on the boat, and we're having our fish cut at a small custom processing facility, and then they're giving it back to us. And we were just about to go home. Actually, we were on our way to the airport, and they called and told Rich, hey, this is going to be for sale, and you should think about buying it. And we were like, what?
No, we catch the fish.
Us? I mean, it's just us. It's just, we just have this little business. And it became like they got the bug in Rich's ear, right? And then it's a community issue too, because there's huge processing facilities, Trident, Peter Pan, I mean, these big guys, all that fish comes in and it goes right back out, right? And the community has very limited involvement. They don't want to cut fish for little fishermen like us. Basically, without that place, we wouldn't have anywhere to cut our fish. And nobody else would either. And the community wouldn't either. And people that live there and catch their fish for sustenance fishing wouldn't be able to have their fish processed. And if it went on the general market, one of those big companies would buy it up just to have it, not to use it, just to keep it off the market. You know what I mean? Like it would just get conglomerated. And so it became kind of this community issue where it's like, this little processing facility is really important to the community. So we gathered a bunch of local fishermen, and everybody went in on it together. So it was like an investment group, but it's all fishermen, and started 60 North Seafoods. So we have Sena Sea, and then we started 60 North Seafoods is the processing facility. And then we have other, fishermen that we know. Rich is a great networker, and he knows everybody and that catches everything. And so now we have this network of fishermen that are quality minded like we are, and they're bringing their fish, and then we can custom cut. It just became, now we can have this freedom to do what we want. And then, we've always been really into this quality handling and how to use the fish. Now we can do things like we have a product called Chop, where we literally, after we're done filleting, there's a backbone that usually goes in the grinder. Well, before that, we have somebody with a spoon scrape the backbone, scrape that one spoonful of meat off of each backbone, and it creates this product we call Chop. It's like hamburger. It's like burger, seafood burger. No skin, no bones. It's just pure meat, and it's really amazing meat that would have been wasted otherwise. So having the facility allowed us to do really cool stuff like that. So we do the catching, we sell other people's fish now too. So fishermen that we know. So we do the catching, and now we have the processing, and then it gets shipped to me. We live in Washington State. And then from there, I ship it with, my crew out of the warehouse, and we put it in the boxes for the people. So this whole process goes right from catching, processing, shipping, and it's really the whole thing. And it's really actually pretty incredible, because I don't think anybody else is doing the entire process.
Well, and I think, it wasn't until I was in my adulthood, I think, that I ventured into any type of like fish or seafood. Like my mom was like always like, I'm like, every now and then she's like, I'm surprised you're eating salmon. Like, and I'm like, yeah, I do that now. She's like, I know, but it was like you refused. She's like, you wouldn't even eat lasagna. I had to put spaghetti sauce on like the sauce on a piece of toast for you. You were very picky. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But it's good now. But I was introduced because somebody had said to me, like, just try it, like, just try this salmon. And I was like, no, because I've tasted it and it's just like blah. And they're like, no, this is like, we caught this. It's wild salmon. There's a difference. And I was like, yeah, okay. But there's a huge difference. Like I was like, this is insane. This is really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And then I was like, then I started realizing there's a huge difference between and I might not be saying the terminology right, but between like, those high commercial fish to
Which is
something what
usually,
you do.
yeah, usually farmed.
Right.
So a lot of people are accustomed to farmed fish or farmed salmon. It would be called Atlantic salmon. And that is kind of a code word for farmed. And they're paler in color and they have lived in a pen and they've had, antibiotics and color added to them. It's very weird. And the texture isn't the same. The nutrients aren't the same. And the eating quality is just like not the same. I come from the reverse. Of course, growing up in a fishing family, all of our fish came. My dad had caught all the fish, it's all in our freezer. It's all very good. When I was live in corporate, and I lived in the Pacific Northwest, so most people knew good fish and it wasn't a thing. I went to work, when I worked for the food company for corporate, and there were people from all over, people from the Midwest, and people said, when I talked about fish, they were like, "Oh, is that fish? Is it fishy?" And I was going, "Fishy? I don't even know what that term means. Is the fish fishy?" I'm going, "It's fish. Is it
It's
fishy?" Like, I
since
don't
birth.
understand what you're saying. And then we had a corporate luncheon and they served farmed fish. And I mean, it was like the first time I'd had farmed fish. I'm in my late 20s. I've never had farmed fish. Why would I?
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm eating it and I go, "Oh my gosh, this is fishy,
This is
isn't it? Is that what
fishy.
you're talking about? This is fishy. Like it's weird. It tastes weird. I just taste the fishy taste, not like it doesn't taste like salmon. It just tastes fishy." And I was like, "Oh, that's what you're talking about."
That's not how it really supposed to taste. Well,
It
and I
was
think
so
that
weird.
sometimes people like just don't know. Like I remember even like going to visit my mom on an island and then somebody like my mom's like, "Okay, we're going to go pick papayas and lemons off the tree." She's like, "The woman's going to get really weird. Don't worry about it." And I was like, "I don't understand what's happening." But so I went in to go buy it, but of course she didn't know me. So she was like, "Oh yeah, we had some in from California." And my mom's like, "No, that's my daughter." And she was like, "Oh, yes, trees out back." Because most of the people who used to visit the island would want the California fruit that they would have shipped in. And when I tasted that papaya, I was like, this is insane. And the woman was like so excited. So she's like, try avocado, which were like, they were insane. They were the size of a baseball. I was like, I didn't know they got this big. Like I didn't realize, but until you are exposed to that, I think there's a lot of people who are, which I was, right? Oh, I don't like fish because
Right.
it was fishy. Right? But you didn't know. You were just like, this is what it tastes like. Why do people like this?
Right. I'm like, "Why do you eat this?" Yeah. And so many foods like that. It's like, I mean, everybody, I think most people know that, uh, garden tomato versus one in the store, they're not even the same. It's just like not the same thing at all. They're not even sweet um, in the store. So it's that difference.
So do you find like for you in like sort of doing this business and now that, we're starting to see more people who are like paying attention to these things, paying attention more to, what is getting sort of antibiotics and all this other stuff. But before when you guys were starting, was there a large education piece that you also had to provide with it to teach people all of these things that we were talking about?
Yeah, from the beginning, that's part of our mission really is that education piece. So like we feel like that's our job. We're a fishing family. We know this stuff, like we're going to help you know what to buy and why we check all the boxes. And so that education piece, I think we picked it up from the farmers market right away. It's there's always something that people are interested to learn a little bit more. And so that idea of really meeting people where they are instead of going like, well, if you knew, you knew, you know,
Right.
it's like, yeah, here, this is the information. A lot of people come at it from different places because people are from, we ship nationally, so we have a national market. And so that makes it really interesting. People come in with all kinds of different awarenesses of wild fish and why. And, we've leaned into that piece on and that's something I love personally. I love to be the expert and I love to just be able to be like, hey, yes, let's, share this information and what are people wondering about? And so that's been a really natural part of what we do, I think.
And on the site and stuff too, you have quite extensive like recipes and stuff. How did that all come around? Was it the same thing? Like people just going, now what, like I
Yeah.
bought this fish, now what do I do with it?
Now what? That again from the farmers market, that was the number one question when we would, give them the spiel and they go, okay, great, I'm interested in this or that. And then, but how do you cook it? And not just how do you cook it? How do you cook it? No, how do you cook it? You're a multi-generational fishing family. How would you cook this
Yeah,
tonight for
because
your
this is
family?
your way is going to be really, really
Yeah.
good.
So that's what I learned is they want to know how we cook it. And so that's our free download. If you jump on our email list, it is recipes from our fishing family. Like this is how we cook each of these fish. This is kind of like our mainstay staple recipe. We do all kinds of things all the time, of course, but we have a few recipes that just like, yeah, let's just go, you know, the basics that come up over and over and over. So those recipes are on our download. And that's again from the farmers market, that's just over and over the same question.
Well, and I think, being open to, asking those questions is important. It always reminds me of the story of the mom who's in her kitchen and, she's making a ham for Easter and she cuts off both ends of the ham. And the daughter's like, Mom, why do you do that? And she's like, oh, I don't know. Like my mom always did it. And so the mom, and they're like, Grandma, why did you do this? And she's like, oh, I don't know. My mom always did it. And then, so anyways, the great grandma comes over and they're like, great grandma, like what, everybody does this. Why do you do it? And she was like, my pot was too small and the ham would never fit. It's like, oh, like here's this tradition. And meanwhile, she's like, what the hell are you guys doing? I just had a small pot. Like,
Why are you kidding
if you
that
just
off?
would have asked a question, right? And it's funny because now, like I remember my mom telling me that story and her thing, I was like, just ask questions and don't be scared that like, the only stupid question is the one that you don't ask because how are you supposed to know if you were never exposed to that, if you're a prairie person, you're like, what?
Yeah, you just
You
don't
know?
know. Yeah, when our black cod recipe, in fact, my dad was one of the first boats in Alaska that switched over from halibut and started catching black cod, which is also called sablefish, and it was all going to Japan. This is in the 80s, all going to Japan, and we're catching it, and we didn't eat much of it because we didn't know how to cook it because Americans aren't familiar with black cod because it's so prized in Japan.
Right.
And so they went to a dinner once, and it was at like a art auction, and they were served sablefish, or it's called black cod, both. And he tried it and was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. And this is what I catch. And he went and introduced himself to the chef and said, I catch this fish. You have to show me how you did this. And the chef was Japanese. And so he had this recipe that he showed, and it was soy sauce with ginger. It's a really simple recipe, but it is so good. And that's our main family recipe now. And it's just because he went in the kitchen and asked, how did you do this?
Yeah, this is really good because often we have, and I think that's relatable to any businesses who are out there listening, that often you have things or skills, that you do or that you use that other people are like, wait a minute, like that's brilliant. And you're like, I don't know. It's just
Right.
normal to
Yeah.
me. So, if if somebody was out there, because we're, doing this series on our podcast about spouses working together, if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who is, either thinking about starting a new business or even thinking about like bringing a partner into the one that they currently have, what is one thing that you were like, gosh, I wish I would have known this or paid more attention to this? What would that be?
I would say really paying attention to each other's skill sets and really diving into each person's skill set. So in the beginning, I, or you have a tendency to go, well, like thinking that that person should be like you.
Right.
Like, oh, if I'm really organized, then how come you can't be organized? Well, no, how about you just do most of the organizing? And if this person has a natural skill set over here, they shouldn't be trying to be like you. They should just lean into their natural skill set. So my husband is the big picture guy, and he is a visionary, and he has a lot of ideas, and great ideas and things like that. And then I'm more of the logistics person. So I'm that person that's going, okay, but like, how do you do that? Like, how does this go to this? And how do you make it all work? And how would you promote that? And how would you talk about that? Like I'm
Right, where
one that
he's
wants
like, I don't know, I
to,
just came up with the idea.
yeah, I want to connect all the dots. And so it actually works out really well. If we each stay in our own lane, he can go like, oh, I have this thing, and like our marinated we do the marinated miso and ginger black cod. So like those black cod recipes I'm talking about, he had this idea to put the marinade in the bag, which nobody's doing. I mean, we should have a patent on it. It was like, okay, I mean, yeah, let's do it. And so, found the people and did it. And then it's like I kind of do the nuts and bolts on how to get it out to the people and how to market it and things like that. So I think just really leaning into your own skill set and not feeling like you need to turn the person into you, and realizing that at sometimes what's the hardest part is that they're different, and that can be the best part because they have the different thing, right? Like I don't like to talk to people on the phone. I just say, Rich, will you call this person?
Well, it's true. And I think if you can feed off of that, I'm more like I'm the idea person in the organization, but my husband is the one who will like rein that in. He's really good at being like logical of going,
Yeah,
that's great and everything. But like, okay, like he's the one who will like talk me through it because I have a great community of other female entrepreneurs who think all of my ideas are wonderful, but he'll be the one who going, hang on a second here.
right.
Like, okay, have you thought about how much time this is going to take? Have you thought about what's already going on? Which thank God I have them, because otherwise I would have way too many pans in the fire and
Right,
nothing in the
right,
pan. Like,
right. And I'm the opposite because I'm the one going, well, have you read the book Rocket Fuel?
yes.
And it's that. It's
Yeah.
the visionary and the tactical, and it does make a really nice pairing. If
Yeah.
you are each confident in that, if you're not trying to make each other into the other one.
Yeah. And it's true. I think, that's something that, to just be aware of is and to figure that out, like what strength, but also what strengths do you have that you want to continue using? Because there's some things that I always say there's some things that I'm really good at and some things that I enjoy, but I don't want to do it for a living. It's a party trick. Can it just stay a party trick?
Yeah.
So what is coming up for Sena Seas and, sort of going forward? What are some, what's Rich dreaming about?
Oh boy. Well, let's see. For us, it's kind of in the near future is the opener. So in the winter, we're kind of selling off last year's fish and kind of switching gears, thinking about the new year. And so May is our new season. Middle of May is when the Copper River opens, and it's a really big deal when the Copper River opens because it's the first fish commercially available on the planet. It's the first wild salmon to spawn, and you catch them when they spawn. So we don't get to set the date, the fish do. And
Right.
so it's, you know, they're watching the fish. So the opener date, we don't even know. It's very like hyped up, and it's always middle of May, and it depends on when, you know, a certain number of fish get through, you know, escape up the river. And so that's always a really big deal. And we've really been learning on Sena Sea how to, like, we pre-sell the fish and how to be confident in how much to pre-sell, and we offer it fresh for just 2 weeks, and then we go into our what we normally do, our premium frozen, so that kind of thing. So we're kind of heading into that season. So for us, you know, just putting it in online terms, like that's our launch season. So that whole terminology is very new, to take that kind of online terminology and plug that into our real life scenario of fishing is like, oh, it's launch season, and we got to get ready, and the prep involved in that. And so pushing all that work back. And I mean, we've been doing this for 8 years, and we're finally figuring out how to do that.
Well, and it takes time, right? Like it's you know, it's like, I think it's like anything. It's, you know, we've used the analogies a couple of times comparing it to like camping. We're seasoned pros at that. Like we know how to hook up and load and everything. But there's always that moment that you're like, wait, what did we do this again? Do you do this or do I do? Like there's always something, right? You
Right.
brought the chairs, right? No? Okay.
Right.
Dumps it
Yeah,
in.
just getting better and better at that. Yeah. So that's the more near term. And I think that for Sena Sea longer term is just really figuring out, you know, what people want. And you mentioned the recipes, and I am finding that that's a big piece that people are wanting is you know, big appetite for the recipe and the how to cook. And the more I want to say the more basic the better. The more just
Mhm.
like, what exactly do I do when I bring this home? How do I defrost it? You know, really providing people with that, like just the confidence to know what to do when you bring fish home, and then you have to handle it and cook it. I mean, just how to bring people that confidence for how to eat more fish, and that's really big mission for us.
So, just before we go, I'd be remiss if I don't say this. Talk to us about the benefits of actually eating more fish.
Oh yeah.
I should
Talk
mention
about
that. Just as you said it, I was like, we should probably tell people what that is.
Well, fish is very healthy for you, and the biggest thing in fish is the omega-3 fatty acids. So the omega-3s are the fat in fish, and in fish it's really amazing because the more fatty acids and the more fat, the better it tastes, like a steak, but also the healthier. And so because it's that unsaturated fat, you get this double whammy where the more fat, more better, and also healthier. So omega-3s are super good for you. They're good for um, so many things. I mean, it's really incredible, but they're good for like regulating. They're good for your brain health. Just good for, oh, I have a list. Where did it go? I don't have it in front of me, but super nutrient dense. And the high omega-3s we actually give to our kids, like if they're having a test the next day, we have black cod, which is high omega-3s, and the salmon is high omega-3s, because omega-3s, like our brain runs on those, on the fatty acids, but they're super helpful. And then just really clean protein. And so it's lots of super nice health benefits in the fish. And the wild fish has the higher nutrient values and the right omega-3 ratios. So when you really get kind of into the nitty gritty, it's all about the omega-3s, those fatty acids, healthy fat, but it's also about the ratio that it's in the product. So you can have high omega-3s, but if you have farm fish, you might have high omega-3s, but even higher omega-6s, and it kind of counteracts. So it's about that kind of omega-3 ratio as well. So um, omega-3s can fight inflammation in your whole body, and inflammation is really big. And, you know, we're finding out more and more of how important inflammation is, and it can help in weight management also. So it's one of these powerhouses for sure.
Yeah. And it's something like I know a lot of people that are out there. I remember, you know, working with a nutrition just recently, and she was like, okay, I want you to have like 2 eggs and then some salmon. And I was like, what the hell? Like, for breakfast or like for supper? Oh, for supper. And she was like, no, 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 for breakfast. And I was like, this is weird. And then I was like, this is not weird. Like after a little while, I was like you said, you're kind of like, this is a good idea. So
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
just a dinner fish.
It's not just a dinner fish. I have this concept. I like salmon for breakfast is the epitome of health. I feel like as soon as you can get, and a lot of health, health books and diets, I mean, they lean heavy into salmon and they're going to talk about salmon and that like if you can get salmon into more of your meals, lunch is easy to me because you just cook a little more for dinner and you have the leftovers. But if you can get salmon into your breakfast, then I feel like you're really getting there on health.
You're getting up there. So, and there's so much info, like, great information, both on your blog and the recipes, like the photos that you have on your website are sublime. Like, I should not have looked. I was searching through them at night and I was like, I'm getting hungry. These look so fantastic. So we'll make sure that we have all of the links to where people can, access, get the website as well as to get the free recipe book to start it, but also to, if you're out there and they haven't really learned a lot or they're not sure, or they're used to fish just being fishy, then they should definitely go and try your stuff. And then you've got a lot of great, videos and stuff on your Instagram and your Facebook. I was searching through those as well. So we'll make sure
Oh yeah.
that we have those links. Thank you so much, Sena, for taking the time to, not only educate on that, but just to give some hints to people that, it can be fun working with a spouse and creating new stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's the overall is really, where it's the lifestyle and we have breakfast with the kids before they go off to school. And that's one moment where we every now and then we just go like want to pinch ourselves and go, we just had the most amazing and fun. Our kids are fun and lively. And we go, if we were working 9 to 5s, we wouldn't have that experience. Those little moments that are really special. And you can't plan them. They just happen.
Well, and I mean, I'm a firm believer that there's just something magical about water. And so the fact that you can like create a business and have your family and all of that sort of intertwined together, I think is just magical. I think they're very lucky.
Thank you. I agree.
I really wanted to have Sena on the show because I thought it was important to sort of showcase how you just never know when life is going to take you in very interesting directions. And I just love her story and all the stories she has about her kids being a part of the business and just, doing it from anywhere, whether you are in a completely secluded, rural spot or whether you're in a bustling city or whether you're out to sea. There really is no excuse for when and where you can do business. So it was really inspiring to me, and I hope you got something from it as well. I've got some exciting stuff coming up for this month. Our 200th episode, 200th episode is next week on April 18th. I'm going to be talking to you about how to cut expenses. We're going to deep dive on this subject because it's one a lot of you guys have been asking me about. And I also, of course, it's 200 episodes. It can't go without something. We're going to have a big giveaway. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. And we also have some more amazing guests that are going to be coming your way for the rest of the month. So just make sure that you subscribe and hit notification buttons wherever it is that you like listening to us so that you don't miss a beat. And no matter what it is that you're doing today, make sure that you take time to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?